Everybody, Adam with Sports Capitalist here, breaking down the Monday Night Football game for you here between the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the alert button so that you guys get the notifications as soon as they happen. So yeah, a solid day of football so far today. Currently watching the Chiefs demolish the Broncos. Have quite a few friends that are Broncos fans, so I try to pull for them when I can, but it's just not happening tonight. The Detroit Lions got their first win today. If you watched our main slate breakdown, Danger and I had a small bet that the Detroit Lions would get a win either this week or next week against Denver. That was my semi-bold prediction. Came to fruition today. Danger's already paid up on it, so great day for Detroit fans. The New York Jets couldn't get it done. It's fine. Season's over anyway. Zach Wilson looked good. The defense just couldn't stop a nosebleed. So, but we had some good DFS picks on our main slate breakdown. Guys like Antonio Gibson, Justin Jefferson, Tom Brady, obviously, all with great games so far. Or not so far, but today rather, as we're winding down the Sunday slate. So let's jump into it. I'll try and make this shorter than the previous Monday night video that I did, or it was a Thursday night video, I think. But either way, single game slate, I want the videos to be a little shorter. So I'm just going to touch on guys I like, guys I don't like, and just kind of how I think the game is going to go. So the Buffalo Bills are hosting the New England Patriots. This one is a battle for the lead in the AFC East. The Patriots are currently the number 1 seed in the AFC, which as a Jets fan infuriates me after 20 years of Tom Brady. And the Bills, I think a lot of people would consider preseason Super Bowl favorites, haven't looked great in recent weeks, but I think this is a get-right game for them and a statement game for them. Buffalo is only 3-point home favorites. I would hammer that. And if you join our Discord, which I should have mentioned at the beginning of the video, you can see all of our picks, some additional breakdowns from other guys that do NFL, other guys that do NFL picks, people just talking freely about plays they like, plays they don't like. And I do NFL picks as well on the Discord. So if you want a full breakdown of all of those picks, be sure to join the Discord because it's 100% free, no monthly membership, anything like that. So Buffalo is 3-point home favorites. The over-under is only 41, so Vegas doesn't seem to think this is going to be a terribly high-scoring game, but since it's the only game on the Monday night slate, we'll see where we can find some fantasy value. Currently drinking Great Lakes Christmas Ale. Fantastic beer if you are in the Ohio area. So, general strategy for this Monday night game. I would say if you are, and we're going to do just the DraftKings side of it, but most of these picks would apply to the FanDuel side as well. Some prices may vary, so be sure to follow the Discord for kind of a final breakdown on if there's any variation there. But general strategy for this one, I think if you're playing cash, 50-50s, that kind of thing, I think it's fine to play both quarterbacks in this scenario. It might be hard to fit both quarterbacks in if you are trying to also fit in Stephon Diggs, but I think both of these defenses will allow some leeway for the quarterbacks unless you think it's going to be very one-sided. And so if you do think it's going to be one-sided, I think this is a good opportunity to play whichever quarterback that you think is going to be on that side of it. I think most people would think that if this game is going to be one-sided, it would be on the side of Buffalo. But depending on how you feel about Mac Jones, or if you want to take the gamble that a lot of people aren't going to do, which is going to be to fade Josh Allen, that's kind of the strategy you would want to go with in the GPP, is only playing one of the two quarterbacks, whichever one you think is going to be the most fantasy relevant, because their prices are pretty close. So it's not as much of a variation between Allen and Mac Jones and their potential upside versus their price. It's more so whichever one you think is going to be better, period. No matter if it's by 1 point, 2 point, maybe 1 point, maybe Mac Jones would be the better play, but you kind of get what I'm saying. They're so close in price that it's essentially, if you want to fade one, it's just going to be whichever one you think is purely going to be better, not necessarily like, oh, they have to be 5 or 6 points higher. So I think Allen and Jones are okay in cash. I'm not crazy about Mac Jones this week. We talked about Mac Jones and his in my previous Thursday night video when they were playing the Falcons, and obviously that was the Falcons defense. Mac Jones has been just torching terrible defenses, and the style of offense is very safe for him. Not a ton of downfield stuff, with the exception of a couple games here and there. I think in that Atlanta game, they won 25-0, but his longest pass was like 19 yards, and that includes yards after the catch. So just a very, very conservative style offense that seems to work because they have the roster around him that can win games, and their strength of schedule hasn't been terribly impressive. So I think going against a Buffalo defense, I think we're going to see a much different Mac Jones than what we've seen in previous weeks, or at least leading up to this season. And we've seen Mac struggle a little bit against better defenses. So I'm all over the Bills on this one. But again, Vegas doesn't seem to think it's going to be very high scoring. They again, Bills are only 3-point home favorites. Over-under's 41. So Vegas seems to think that it's going to be close and it's going to be ugly. I haven't checked the weather forecast. Maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe they're expecting some bad weather in Buffalo for the Monday night game. But we'll see. I'm glad we have an editor so that we can edit out these pauses. I don't see a ton of stuff. I don't see a ton of good stuff coming out of the New England offense in this game. But that's not to say that you can't play anybody. Obviously, you're going to have to, because that's the way that DFS works. You have to play the other team in some capacity. So I'll start on the Buffalo side. Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen are projecting as my top two guys, and that's pretty normal for any week, whether it's a single game or a main slate. Stephon Diggs is usually in the top three wide receivers, usually regardless of price, and Josh Allen is usually up there in terms of quarterbacks. So across all positions, Diggs and Allen are right at the top there. Surprisingly, a guy that's also projecting towards the top, and I think it's because his price is low, is Devin Singletary. I don't know what's happened with Zach Moss in recent weeks, but it just hasn't really been there for him. I don't know if he's been fighting some sort of nagging injury. Maybe he has been hurt. I didn't double check that, but he's not on the injury report here, or at least he's not declared out. So I'm not sure what the issue is with Zach Moss, but I think there's a good reason that he's only priced at $600 this week. So Devin Singletary, only at $4,600, I think is a great play, especially if you've seen our previous videos. You know that I've said that lower over-unders tend to favor running backs in these games, so in terms of fantasy production. So Devin Singletary, I really like his price at $4,600, especially if you're looking for somebody in that range that's going to save you some of that money so that you can have room for Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and potentially some other guys up there towards the top. I also really like Emmanuel Sanders at his price at $6,400. He's been very disappointing given how he has started, but I think this is that's just kind of one of those gut feeling kind of things. Things have to come back to the middle eventually, right? And so he started out hot. He's been super cold since. and so I think he's due for some sort of bounce back game, and especially compared to Cole Beasley, who's at 7,800. You can save $1,400 and grab Emmanuel Sanders, and maybe Beasley at this point has more upside because he gets more pure receptions, but Emmanuel Sanders is always good for kind of that downfield threat kind of scoring. Additionally, I'll cover those in a minute. Dawson Knox is an okay play at 5,400. I'm always wary of tight ends that, not the ones that are like people that aren't in the top 5 of tight ends, Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, that kind of thing. I'm usually wary on playing in single game slates, but Dawson Knox's price is okay for 5,400. It's not jumping off the page at me, but it's not something that I'm saying I'm not going to play him. I think that's a fair price for Dawson Knox, maybe even a little underpriced, to be honest. And then a punt play that I really like on the Buffalo side, Isaiah McKenzie for only 200. He's kind of one of those gadget guys that they can incorporate into the offense at any time. He's a gadget guy that they can incorporate into the offense, at any time. So that's a real punt play. That's not like a slam dunk, play him in cash kind of play, but I could certainly see a scenario where Isaiah McKenzie is fantasy relevant enough to justify using a roster spot on him for only $200 for sure. Guys I don't like as much on the Buffalo side, we talked already about Cole Beasley. I know he's been kind of on a good streak as of late, but 7,800, especially unless you're fading Stephon Diggs, 7,800 is going to be a tough price to eat with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs already in your lineup. And I already covered that. Emmanuel Sanders is $1,400 cheaper than that, and Dawson Knox is another $1,000 cheaper than Emmanuel Sanders. So Beasley, I'm not liking purely based on price. And then we also covered Zach Moss, and I think Zach Moss is going to be he's going to get a good amount of ownership because he's only 600, and people are going to see his name and that he's only $600 and think, why would you only price him like that? Of course I'm going to play him. And maybe that's an okay cash play, but I think there's a reason that Zach Moss is only priced at 600. And so I don't see the upside for him being there. It's tough to bet in general on the Buffalo rushing attack because you don't really know what you're going to get week to week, other than the fact that Josh Allen really isn't rushing as much. But Zach Moss at $600 really feels like a trap. And so I'm probably going to shy away from him at that price. Before we get into the Patriots side, I'm going to cover the defenses, and I'm just going to do it on both sides. Again, this is a lower over-under game, so I think both defenses are in play. I think they'll be at similar ownership percentages. I like Buffalo's defense for the reasons that I mentioned before with Mac Jones and tougher defenses. I know Buffalo's defense hasn't been, shut down like we thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year, but they're $200 cheaper than the New England defense. They're at home. They're playing a rookie quarterback that is in a very conservative style offense. And again, the over-under is very low. So I think both defenses are in play, and I think actually playing both might be an interesting GPP strategy. Certainly not recommended, but I could certainly see a scenario where that works out, especially if it's really ugly, really low scoring, and maybe the weather in Buffalo allows a scenario where both defenses are able to really thrive fantasy-wise. So I like both defenses. And with that, we will go into the New England side. I mentioned Mac Jones already at 10,000. I think he's an okay cash play. I don't see a scenario with Mac Jones where he can get you there in a GPP. The best case scenario I can think, even if you wanted to play Mac Jones in GPP, in a scenario where you think New England's down a good chunk for most of the game and they're forced to throw it, then as opposed to run it, I would think Mac Jones could get you there in that scenario in a GPP, but I still wouldn't put him at the captain spot. I think that would be, in that scenario, if you're, again, we talked about the one quarterback GPP play. So if you're playing Mac Jones instead of Josh Allen, I still probably wouldn't have Mac Jones in the captain spot. I would probably put like a Buffalo. I would maybe put Stephon Diggs or Devin Singletary, or maybe even a New England skill position like a Kendrick Bourne or whoever you think is going to be the most fantasy relevant among the skill positions. I really don't see Mac Jones getting you there if you're trying to take down a GPP at the captain spot. It just, the style of play, the style of that offense, I don't see it. I think he's fine for cash. And again, if you're fading one or the other, that would certainly give you some leverage because more people are going to have Josh Allen than they will Mac Jones. But I have a hard time seeing it. And maybe there's a little bit of bias there, but it's been very similar, in my opinion, to Baker Mayfield last year, where the offense looked great, and now they look terrible. And the primary reason for that, there's two, in my opinion, but I think there's also statistics to back it up. Number one is Cleveland last year had a bottom 5 strength of schedule. So they played a cupcake schedule, and they eked their way into the playoffs only because they added a playoff spot that year. But then additionally, the offense was very run heavy. And that's not necessarily the case with New England because they do pass a good chunk. They're just very conservative passes, but it was very protective of the quarterback. So if you look at last year and you look at the Browns offense, the fantasy stats looked great. But if you look at the quarterback specifically, Baker Mayfield only threw for 300 plus twice last year. And that was because they were playing a bottom 5 schedule. Their offense was mainly structured around Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and none of those teams, because they had a bottom 5 strength of schedule, could stop those guys. So I think you're seeing something similar with Mac Jones where, and don't get me wrong, as a rookie, it's been impressive what he's done. But I think he's being overestimated in a quarterback and fantasy capacity because of just the perception of they're winning games, they're the number 1 seed, he must be doing incredible. And while it's impressive, I certainly wouldn't call it incredible. Again, the example on that Thursday night game, they blew out the Falcons 25-0. His longest pass went for 19 yards. So all that to say, I think he's an okay fantasy play, but I just don't see his upside getting you there if you're trying to take down a tournament. So moving on to some other New England plays. Talking about running back, we talked about how lower over-unders tend to favor the running backs, but Damian Harris's price is really gross to me at 9,800. That's a really tough one to eat. Again, unless you want to fade like the top Buffalo guys. And we saw, even upon his return from injury, that Ramondre Stevenson is still very involved in this offense. So I actually would rather play Stevenson at 5,600 because I think he's got enough involvement in the offense and in the passing game. We saw him still involved in the passing game even after Damian Harris came back. So I think he's got enough involvement to not only justify playing him, but also eat enough into Damian Harris's workload that I don't think Harris is worth his 9,800. So I'll include him and the guys I don't like towards the end here, but just touching on running backs in general. Ramondre Stevenson is the one I'm most interested in on the Patriots side. If I were to rank them among the 4 running backs that we've talked about across the slate, I would probably go Devin Singletary, Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Harris, Zach Moss, in that order. But it's Singletary and Stevenson are easily like 1 and 2. I don't think it's particularly close. It's close between Moss and Harris, just because Moss's price is so much cheaper. But again, we talked about that earlier, and that kind of feels like a trap. Kendrick Bourne, I do like at 8,600. I think he is worth his price tag. I know that's been inflated because he's had a few really big games off of a couple really big plays, but that's just kind of his gimmick. He's one of those, not necessarily maybe a pure wide receiver, but one of those gadget guys that they could plug into an offense, kind of a poor man's Deebo Samuel, if you will. So I think Bourne is worth his 8,600 price tag, and I actually think he'll come in a little bit under-owned because he is 8,600. So I really like Bourne. Of these skill positions he actually might be my favorite play on the Patriots, to be honest. Kendrick Bourne at 8,600. So if you're banking or you're structuring a lineup around the idea that Buffalo absolutely demolishes New England, then Kendrick Bourne would be the Patriot that I would want in that lineup, especially because in that scenario, you would think that New England would have to pass more, so he'd be more involved than a Ramondre Stevenson at that point. So really like Kendrick Bourne on the Patriots side. Talked about Ramondre Stevenson. Brandon Bolden, I think, can get you there at 3,200 if you're talking about a scenario where New England has to throw a lot. 3,200 is a tough price to look at originally, but if you think they have to throw a ton, they're going to start circling out those running backs, and Brandon Bolden will be involved enough to hopefully get you there. That's certainly a GPP play. I wouldn't play Brandon Bolden in cash, that's for sure. But there's a scenario there where Bolden is fantasy relevant. Hunter Henry, solid play at 5,200. Between him and Knox, my model has Knox a few spots higher, even though Knox is more expensive at 5,400. But, we've seen what Hunter Henry can do in this offense and what his role is. He's certainly more involved than Jonnu Smith. But it just depends on kind of the game script and where you think those targets are going to go. He might get more targets than somebody like a Kendrick Bourne, but I think Bourne has the ability to do more with them. So Hunter Henry, similar to Dawson Knox, is one of those plays where I don't hate it, but it's also just not jumping off the page for me. So I think that's about it in terms of guys I'm really interested in on the New England side. Guys I don't like, we already talked about Damian Harris. Jacoby Myers at 7,200. I'm not crazy about. He just hasn't. He gets receptions. Sometimes he'll get the yards, and he doesn't score. So at 7,200, that's a really tough price to gamble on for a guy that is really dependent on getting a lot of receptions and hopefully getting some yards out of it, because he just doesn't seem to find his way into the end zone. So I'm not crazy about him. Nelson Aguilar, yeah, similar kind of thing. Well, not similar, but he's a very touchdown dependent wide receiver, and that's not something that you want, unless you're putting him into a GPP lineup and you want to take a gamble on a big shot touchdown like you would if you were playing somebody like a Deshaun Jackson, or more recently like an Odell Beckham Jr. Guys where they're not going to get a ton of receptions, but if they get that one big play, they're worth it. So I just got a notification. Sorry, you guys can edit that out. So not super into Nelson Aguilar. Everybody else I think is just kind of in play. It's really hard to determine with the New England offense and just how they kind of shake things up on a week-to-week basis. The last subject I'll talk on is the kickers. Neither of them are really jumping off the page to me. And again, in a lower over-under game, harder to see the kickers justifying their price. So Tyler Bass for Buffalo is 4,400. Nick Folk for the Patriots is 4,200. Really tough to eat those prices in a game that Vegas doesn't seem to think is going to be very high scoring. At those prices, I'd rather play the defenses. So I'm not terribly interested in either of the kickers as well. So just to recap, Buffalo 3-point home favorites. It's projected to be a low over-under. On the Buffalo side, my top guys, Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, Devin Singletary, Emmanuel Sanders, and probably the Buffalo defense, and then Isaiah McKenzie there as a punt play. And then on the New England side, Mac Jones is an okay play. Really like Kendrick Bourne. I like Ramondre Stevenson this week as well. Hunter Henry's an okay play. I'll throw in a punt play on the New England side. N'Keal Harry for only 200. That's a guy that might be able to get you there, but again, that's super risky. So again, be sure to subscribe to our channel so that we can continue to grow the channel and put on the alert so that you guys get alerted when these videos drop. I apologize for kind of the shakiness again of the camera. I just got it sitting on my lap for the time being because I wanted to get a video out to you guys as quickly as possible. And then be sure to join our Discord, The Sports Capitalist. The link will be in the section below. And again, it's 100% free, no monthly membership. It's just a bunch of people talking about sports, and any sport that you want to talk about, we most likely have. Football, basketball, baseball. I also do NASCAR, Danger, if you watch our main slate videos, dabbles in esports. So we got all that kind of stuff, golf, tennis, anything that you can think of for daily fantasy or just general gambling picks, we most likely have. So give it a follow because it's 100% free. Everybody, good luck tomorrow. I'm going to enjoy this game because I'm hoping that New England gets stomped because I'm a bitter Jets fan. But everybody, hope you had a great weekend. Good luck tomorrow, and we will see you here later in the week for Danger. We'll do the Thursday night breakdown, and then we'll do our main slate breakdown towards the end of the week. So good luck, everybody, and thanks for watching.